Mr. Biddle and the Birds by Lonzo Anderson, illustrated by Adrian Adams. Mr. Biddle lay in his hammock. He watched his 4 bird friends fly in. They were coming to have lunch with him, as usual. How big they were, how strong, how beautiful in the air. "I am thinking of flying with you," Mr. Biddle shouted. "It must be wonderful." Crown, the leader of the birds, he landed on the table first. Then there was a thud, thud, thud came the other 3. Odso, Bodso, and Charlie. The birds started gobbling up the food. Mr. Biddle came to the table. He was very excited. "Don't you hear me?" he asked. "I am thinking of ways to fly with you." He took a piece of paper and a feather pen. He drew a picture. "Look at this sketch," he said, "and see how you like it. Come, you could eat any time, for heaven's sake." The birds looked. "A little boat on poles," Crown said. "A chair in the air," Adso said. "A cradle in the ladle. A porch in the snorch," Bodso said. Charlie giggled. "A house in the blouse. A kitchen in the snitchin'." "Oh, shut up," Crown shouted. "Mr. Biddle, it's a good idea. The little boat with us carrying it." "Well then," Mr. Biddle said happily, "let's make it." He did not even stop to eat. He started pulling out of the barn all of the things he would need. The birds tried to help with the work at first, but they only got in the way. Odso brought some pieces of string in case Mr. Biddle should wish to make a nest. Mr. Biddle said, "maybe you'd better let me build this myself. There will be plenty for you to do later." Soon the birds were chasing each other all around the sky, quarreling and screaming like little hoodlums. "I wonder," Mr. Biddle said to himself, "am I wasting my time? They can't think of anything but play, fight, and eat, eat, eat." Still, he kept on building the airboat. He added a canvas cover in case of rain. When the job was done, he called in the birds. "It's just great," Crown said. "We can have fun with this," Odso said. "Good," Mr. Biddle said, pleased as pudding. "But we shall have to have some corsets made for you before we can work." "Corsets? What are they?" "They are to connect you to the poles. Remember the sketch I made? You hook the corsets on and fly away with me in the flying boat. Come to the corset maker. You will see what I mean." Off to the village they went. They felt silly at the corset maker's shop. Crown said, "I'm not sure I like this, but go ahead. Put the corset on me." When the corsets were fitted, the birds could not wait. Crown shouted, "Here we go," and led the way. "No, no," Mr. Biddle cried. "We're not ready yet." He started running. "We have to think about it and plan ahead." By the time he reached home, the birds had hooked themselves to the poles in any old way. Flip, flap, they worked their powerful wings. Away went the flying boat. Mr. Biddle came gasping for breath and made a dive into it just in time. "Hooray!" Odso screamed. "It's off the ground." Mr. Biddle hung on. His heart went bang, bang, bang. The birds began to fight. "Get out of my way!" Odso cried. Their wings were getting all wrangled up. "You get out of my way!" Bodso bawled. The flying boat bounced and jounced and twisted and jostled. "Where do you think you're going?" Crown shouted. They were trying to fly in different directions. "Where do you think you're going?" Charlie asked. Mr. Biddle was tumbling out. He barely managed to get back inside. The birds screamed. Such confusion. The flying boat was falling, hurtling toward the earth. "Oh no, down, down. Something has gone wrong." Crash deep into a forest. Then there's silence. One by one the birds pulled themselves up and free. Mr. Biddle crawled out. "Is everyone all right?" he asked, worried. The birds just looked at him. "Is anyone hurt?" Mr. Biddle asked again. A lot you care," Bodso shouted angrily. The other birds made furious noises. "You nearly hurt us. You wanted to fly in, hitting through the sky, hitching up birds like horses. We're not meant for that." Mr. Biddle looked at them for a minute. "All right," he said, "forget it. Flying is no fun." Terrible disappointment, and he walked away. And the next day he said, "We can make this thing work if we really wanted to, if we can fix it. Come on, let's try. It doesn't look too bad." They lifted the flying boat down onto level ground. Then they did something they had never done before. They worked and worked and worked and worked. Finally, Adso said, "There, good as new." "All right," Crown said. Places, everyone. Let's do this the right way. Don't hook on side by side. Leave room for the other fellow to work his wings like this. Me in front on the left. Charlie, you a little behind. Me on the right. And so on. Good. No fooling around now. Remember, it's for Mr. Biddles. Soon they took off, smooth as a breeze. Up, up. They were delighted with themselves. They flew over Mr. Biddle's house and looked down. He was lying in his hammock. "Look up, Mr. Biddle," Adso cried, high in the sky. "Shh, he's asleep," Crown said. "Let's surprise him." And down they went. Their great wings made whispers in the wind as they were landing on Mr. Biddle's lawn. Something went squeak. Shh. Mr. Biddle woke up. He jumped out of his hammock, so surprised. "Hop in. Let's go for a ride and a spin around the sky." Slowly Mr. Biddle climbed in and sat down. He looked so surprised and dazed. The birds took off and whoosh through the sky. Mr. Biddle leaned out and spread his arms out and smiled and said, "Oh, this is wonderful. I knew it would be. I knew it. Thank you, my good friends. Thank you." The end. There's Mr. Biddle flying in the sky with the birds.